Let's shed some light on a televised discussion concerning a significant diplomatic rift between India and Turkey, triggered by a deadly explosion in New Delhi. The incident, which killed over a dozen people, acted as a catalyst, igniting long-simmering tensions. The core of the immediate conflict lies in the response from segments of the Indian media, which launched a campaign allegedly linking Turkey to the terrorist attack. These reports, as summarized by the panel, accuse Turkey of providing logistical, diplomatic, and financial support to the groups responsible. Turkey's Center for Combating Disinformation swiftly and publicly rejected these allegations, labeling them a malicious disinformation campaign designed to damage bilateral relations. This public rebuttal underscores the seriousness with which Ankara views the accusations. The discussion, moderated by a Turkish TV channel host, features three experts: Amaya Anis, assistant professor at Ankara Yildirim University, providing a Turkish perspective; Hanan Hussein, senior expert at Initiate Futures, providing a regional security perspective, likely from Pakistan; and Mehmet Çelik, editorial coordinator at Daily Sabah, a major Turkish newspaper, providing a media and analytical perspective. The conversation moves beyond the immediate incident to explore the historical context, the role of media and government, strategic misreadings, and potential future trajectories for the India-Turkey relationship. The panelists unanimously agree that the current spat is not an isolated event, but the culmination of years of building strain. The analysis identifies several layers of historical and strategic discord. Amaya Anis lays the groundwork by highlighting fundamental incompatibilities between India and Turkey. He points out that the two nations represent different strategic and political contexts and have so many mismatches in their international and regional interest. These divergences are historical, tracing back to the Cold War, where they belong to different camps, and have persisted as conflict of interest and contradictions in their foreign policy for a very long time. He notes a brief period of reconciliation during the tenures of Indian Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi and Turkish President Turgut Özal, but this détente has since eroded. The single most significant point of contention identified by all panelists is Turkey's relationship with Pakistan, particularly regarding the Kashmir issue. Anis states that during recent India-Pakistan clashes, the Indian media and public perceived Turkey's support for Pakistan as quite exceptional, and to the extent that Turkey was seen as a party in the conflict. This perception, whether accurate or not, has become a dominant lens through which India views Turkey. Mehmet Çelik categorizes this as a red line for India that consistently hinders bilateral progress. He argues that whenever India-Turkey relations seem to be moving forward, the Kashmir card is played, pulling them back into the orbit of the India-Pakistan rivalry. Çelik provides a broader geopolitical framework, suggesting the tensions operate on three levels. First, bilateral level, the direct relationship between New Delhi and Ankara. Second, the Pakistan-Kashmir level, how the India-Pakistan conflict overshadows and dictates India-Turkey dynamics. Third, international camp politics. He posits that India and Turkey are positioning themselves in opposing international camps. He cites examples like the South Caucasus, where India and Turkey have supported opposing sides. The Middle East, where India's close ties with Israel place it at odds with Turkey's regional stance. Relations with major powers, Çelik contrasts Turkey's ability to maintain pragmatic relations with the US and Russia despite major disagreements, e.g., over Syrian policy and the PKK-YPG, with what he sees as India's lack of similar pragmatism towards Turkey. A central theme of the discussion is the apparent disconnect between the aggressive narrative pushed by certain Indian media outlets and the official silence from the Indian government. The host notes that mainstream Indian publications like India Today, The Economic Times, and Business Today published reports implying foreign handlers from Pakistan and Turkey were partners in the New Delhi attack. Hanan Hussein describes these claims as being of a significant magnitude, involving allegations of global terror and plotting. Mehmed Çelik attributes this to sensationalism as the prevailing style of Indian media, which, when fueled by very far-right tendencies and far-right nationalism, becomes a bomb that could explode anywhere at any time. Crucially, the Indian government has not formally accused Turkey or Pakistan of involvement. Hanan Hussein offers a critical analysis of this silence. He argues that for the government to issue an official statement would be to grant official acknowledgement and ownership of these claims. The absence of such a statement, in his view, kind of corroborates Turkey's view that this is largely a disinformation campaign. However, he and other panelists see the government's passive silence as a weak spot. By not actively distancing itself from the media frenzy, the government is perceived as allowing a damaging narrative to fester, which could sway bilateral ties. Hussein suggests that a more categorical rejection from the Indian side would have sent a decisive signal. The panel links the media campaign and the government's cautious approach to India's internal politics. Hanan Hussein explicitly states that the government's approach to the attacks is shaped by internal affairs. He points to a lot of pressure on Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi after the May strikes about being hard on terrorism. In this context, the terrorism narrative is a powerful tool to strengthen political constituencies. Allowing the media to target external actors like Pakistan and Turkey serves a domestic political purpose, even in the absence of substantial evidence. It allows the administration to project strength on security without the immediate need for verifiable proof, a tactic that is not convincing to many observers around the board. The Turkish panelists provide a clear picture of how the accusations are perceived in Ankara and the rationale behind Turkey's response. Turkey's rejection of the allegations is absolute. The statement from its Center for Combating Disinformation, read on air, leaves no room for ambiguity. Mehmed Çelik reinforces that Turkey wouldn't take these serious in the sense that these allegations are baseless, emphasizing Turkey's long-standing stance against any sort of terrorism, regardless of the roots and the source. Çelik offers a pointed critique of India's strategic approach to Turkey. He argues that India is missing an opportunity in terms of pragmatism. He contrasts India's stance with that of the US and Russia, who, despite profound disagreements with Turkey on issues like Syria, maintain a pragmatic relationship. He believes India misreads Turkey's regional and international influence, mistakenly placing it on a different pole, and that this is a missed opportunity for New Delhi. Amaya Anis presents a more conciliatory Turkish academic perspective. While defending Turkey's right to its foreign policy, he suggests that the Turkish perception and prescription for South Asian conflicts, particularly Kashmir, are completely different from India's. He observes that Ankara's assertions have become gradually so assertive that India has become quite worried. He proposes that there is a need for some sort of softening in Ankara's approach, arguing that bilateral forums are the best mechanism for resolving the Kashmir issue, and that Turkey, with its limited capability, should review its role to be more of a facilitator than a party. This, he believes, would be quite helpful in de-escalating tensions. The fallout extends beyond diplomacy into the economic and social spheres. The host mentions Indian calls for boycotts of Turkish products and tourism. Amaya Anis describes this as an extremely unfortunate situation where diplomacy has left everything to public sentiments, leading to cancelled contracts and agreements. However, he introduces a note of economic realism, pointing to a strong economic logic in the relationship. He highlights that Indian companies export about $10 billion to Turkey, and Turkish businesses are seeking to expand in India. He is optimistic that this sentimental part and emotional time will go away, believing the mutual economic need will eventually force a resumption of normal business relations, making the boycotts temporary and symbolic in the long run. Anas provides a profound diagnosis of the state of people-to-people relations. He describes the current situation as abnormal, characterized by a complete breakdown of mutual, bilateral dialogue. This extends beyond diplomatic channels to a collapse in civil society dialogue and active, vibrant discussions between the two societies. He laments that people in both countries know about each other very limited things, and that there is no serious effort to understand each other's perspective. This vacuum of understanding, he argues, is the fertile ground in which misunderstanding and misperception flourish, making any minor incident like the media claims a major crisis. The discussion concludes by weighing the potential consequences and future of the relationship. Mehmed Çelik directly addresses the question of who is harmed more by the media campaign. He concludes it is a lose-lose situation. While Turkey suffers in terms of tourism and its international image, India also loses by severing a potential strategic and economic partnership. He warns that if the media campaign continues, it will harm Turkish interest. And it also means that Turkey's relationship will be severed with India, and India will suffer from that as well. The panelists suggest a way out. For Çelik, the onus is on India to refrain from rhetoric that fuels that type of position of the media. He argues that even if the government does not explicitly blame Turkey, underlining tones from politicians fuel media narratives. A clear official position from India desiring to build trust, they want to build relationship despite their differences on issues that could basically be left aside for now, would be beneficial. Hanan Hussein echoes this, stating it is in India's interest to kind of clear the air and put out a statement, to distance itself from the disinformation. Çelik ends with a macro-historical perspective, framing the India-Pakistan-Kashmir issue, and by extension the tensions with Turkey, as part of the heritage left behind from the colonial powers. He argues that it is the duty of the post-colonial states to sort out that disagreement and find a way for cooperation rather than remaining busy with problems engineered in a bygone era. The discussion paints a picture of a deeply troubled bilateral relationship where a tragic domestic event in India has acted as a catalyst, exposing profound strategic divergences, a toxic media environment, and a critical breakdown in diplomatic and societal communication. The core conflict is not solely about the New Delhi explosion, but is deeply entangled with the India-Pakistan rivalry, competing geopolitical visions, and domestic political calculations in India. While there is a strong undercurrent of economic pragmatism that may eventually pull both nations back from the brink, the immediate future appears fraught with tension, mistrust, and the damaging consequences of what all parties except the accusing media outlets seem to regard as a dangerous and unfounded disinformation campaign. The resolution hinges on whether political leadership in New Delhi can and will prioritize long-term strategic pragmatism and clear communication over short-term domestic political gains afforded by passive acquiescence to nationalist media rhetoric.